shouldn't be alive. Unless it was for a reason.
Glorious purpose.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy. So the big problem with the MCU right now is that it needs its main character. It's Tony Stark, and there is now no Tony Stark for the Multiverse Saga.
Ryan, actually, if I could...
What, Colton? Oh, by the way, Colton is the guy who's eternally trapped in our television who can't get out, but he doesn't know that, so please don't tell him. What were you saying?
Well, you know, the Multiverse Saga does have a main character. It's Loki.
Yeah, bro, I don't know. I disagree.
No, hear me out. As crazy as it may seem, I think that the Multiverse Saga's Tony Stark could be the god of mischief himself, Loki.
What did you expect?
Loki and Tony are a lot alike. Both are wisecracking, egotistical rebels who grew up with silver spoons in their mouths, and both had complicated relationships with their fathers that greatly shaped who they were as adults. But that's not where the similarities stop. In the MCU's first film, Iron Man, we saw Tony Stark get a massive wake-up call when he was held captive by the Ten Rings.
Effective immediately, I am shutting down the weapons manufacturer division of Stark International.
This traumatic experience resulted in Tony changing from a selfish, warmongering billionaire to a brave, courageous, and self-sacrificing hero.
Iron Man.
And we're seeing Loki go through that same transition now. After crash landing and being captured in a desert, just like Tony Stark in the first Iron Man, Loki was then taken captive by the TVA, where his glorious purpose was put in perspective. When Tony was held captive in that cave, he came out a changed man with a whole new view on life and his role within it. For Tony's entire life, he was under the impression that he was meant to follow the same path as his father, a path that would be riddled with the blood of innocence and cause never-ending chaos. Tony's time in that cave completely dismantled his former purpose in life and then burdened him with a new one.
Don't waste your life.
The same can be said for Loki. His arrival at the TVA and the revelation of how his villainous life would end turned his world upside down. This revelation also sat Loki down a whole new path with an all-new glorious purpose to fulfill, but more on that in a bit. So when 2008's Iron Man kicked off Phase 1 of the MCU, no one expected this B-list superhero to become the juggernaut he is today. Now, the same can be said for Loki. I mean, who would have thought that a Disney Plus series would be where we meet Kang the Conqueror, where we'd be introduced to the entire concept of the Marvel multiverse, the sacred timeline, the TVA. You'd think this blockbuster material would be introduced in like the post-credit scene of an Avengers movie, or maybe like Multiverse of Madness or Spider-Man No Way Home. But no, all of this crucial information for the Multiverse Saga is being introduced through the eyes of the God of Mischief. And hey, I'm glad, because he is the perfect choice.
Okay, so Tony Stark and Loki are a lot alike, but how does that make Loki the protagonist of the Multiverse Saga?
Well, Loki's character is the perfect embodiment of the multiverse as a whole. His character has the very traits you would find in a multiversal story. Concepts such as longing, regret, and rebellion. Loki has spent his entire life trying to find his glorious purpose, only to be denied that purpose time and time again. And I mean, think about it. What is multiversal storytelling if not an up-close look at one's own destiny and purpose in life? Loki's entire journey thus far has been a demonstration on how one tiny thing can change the course of history, such as when he was taken from Jotunheim as an infant. Loki spent so much of his life feeling out of place and like he didn't belong, a lot like a variant with no place and time. The out-of-place situation Loki has found himself in should feel pretty familiar. Characters like Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, they were all seemingly destined for greatness. Despite their own personal tragedies, the scripture of the sacred timeline has been really kind to them. They have been allowed to live Loki's dream, to be beloved. Loki, however, is a character who has spent years longing for admiration, only to be met with failure and defeat. Unlike those self-righteous Avengers, Loki is a character who has actually been burdened by the rule of Kang. He's burdened with a glorious purpose that he's never allowed to achieve. He's burdened by the question of, what if? What if I was never adopted? What if I were king of Jotunheim? What if I were king of Asgard? What if I'd won the Battle of New York? And in a deleted scene from Thor the Dark World, we see Loki cast an illusion on himself where he becomes king of Asgard.
Loki.
Come the end of Thor the Dark World and into Thor Ragnarok, we learn that Loki did fake his death and he has disguised himself as Odin.
All right, I yield!
also that he could experience what he felt was his purpose in life, ruling Asgard. Tony Stark's what if centered around what if I'm not enough. Tony lived in this constant state of fear that an outside threat would come and that he and the Avengers wouldn't be ready. From his nightmares in Iron Man 3 to his gruesome visions in Age of Ultron, Tony foresaw possible futures that the Avengers were destroyed, and Thanos won.
Did we just lose?
What ifs are a central theme shared not only by Loki and Tony, but by all multiverse stories going back to It's a Wonderful Life.
Hey, guy on TV? That's a Christmas movie.
Yes, that's true, but Scott Rosen has pointed out that it was also the first multiverse movie. The main character, George Bailey, is shown an alternate universe where he never existed, and he sees what life would be like without him. Now, speaking of visions and the illusions that Loki casted on himself, what really is He Who Remains, the ruler of the Marvel multiverse, if not an illusionist? He Who Remains has created the illusion of free will, but as we learned through Loki, there's no such thing. All of this is why Loki and Loki variants like Sylvie are the perfect conduits to demonstrate the cruelty of the sacred timeline. They are a character who wants to be more than a villain that is destined to lose, but if they dare step off their predetermined path, they're taken back to the TVA and pruned from existence. This never-ending fate harkens back to Loki's Norse origins with the destruction of Asgard. In fact, the name Loki comes from the Norwegian word for loop, lock. So the character of Loki has been caught in this time loop even prior to his introduction to the Marvel Comics.
Damn, that's actually really cool, man. I didn't know that.
I know, right? And Loki's destiny in Norse mythology was to be an agent of chaos and destruction that inevitably brings about Ragnarok. Ragnarok then destroys the world and gives birth to a new one, and the entire process begins again. This is exactly the situation Loki has found himself in the Multiverse Saga. We're at the beginning of another multiversal war that He Who Remains believes will end the same way as it did before.
Another multiversal war, and I just end up right back here anyways.
This destiny of chaos and destruction is yet another tie to Tony Stark. Tony's destiny was to fill the shoes of his father and continue manufacturing weapons of war. Weapons that would feed the military-industrial complex and only cause more and more wars to occur until there was nothing else to blow up. But Tony put a stop to it.
When I realized what my weapons were capable of in the wrong hands, I shut it down, stopped manufacturing.
Tony changed his destiny, and fortunately for him, he was allowed to do so. Loki, on the other hand, not so much.
Because we, my friends, have but one part to play. The god of outcasts.
Now, come the end of the Infinity Saga, Tony discovers his purpose. He was meant to not only join the Avengers and save countless lives, but his final and greatest mission was to create a time machine, resurrect half of existence, and defeat Thanos. Tony's entire journey from the moment that shrapnel entered his heart was to be the hero who brought down the Mad Titan and saved the universe. So I think come the end of the Multiverse Saga, we'll learn that Loki has a similar purpose on an even grander scale. Like Tony was haunted by Thanos, I think Loki will be haunted by Kang.
Yeah, but the Infinity Saga ended with Tony Stark versus Thanos, so does that mean that the Multiverse Saga is going to have to end with Kang versus Loki?
Yeah, I believe so. It will be Loki who we see in a final head-to-head match with Kang. I mean, think about it. Loki is one of the remaining OG characters from the early days of the MCU. I also think we're going to learn that this multiversal war has happened many times before, and that it was all part of He Who Remains' plan to make sure that the war happens the same way every time, so that he always ends up back at the top.
See you soon.
And Loki and Sylvie are, of course, key players in this same destiny unfolding every time. As usual, the Loki's glorious purpose is to bring chaos and destruction so that others can win and flourish. In the Loki Season 1 finale, He Who Remains revealed that he laid the path for Loki and Sylvie to find him. And while he claims he doesn't know what's going to happen after they cross the threshold, we know dude is a liar.
So I fibbed.
So while it may be true that after crossing the threshold, He Who Remains was no longer omnipotent,
I know it all.
but that doesn't mean that Loki and Sylvie weren't doing exactly as he intended. I don't believe that He Who Remains had any intention of handing power over to the Lokis. His plan was going exactly as he had foreseen.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
That Emperor clip is really accurate. This scene where Loki and Sylvie are crossing blades in He Who Remains throne room is so reminiscent of Luke and Vader's duel in Return of the Jedi. Both duels are taking place before an Emperor's throne, and both are a battle of destiny. Emperor Palpatine paved the path that led Luke to his throne room, just like He Who Remains did for the Lokis.
I paved the road. You just walked down it.
Palpatine's intentions were for Luke to kill his father, turn to the dark side, and take his father's place by his side. Sure, he taunted Luke to kill him, but that was all an act. The same goes for He Who Remains. He taunted Loki with the throne he always wanted, but it was all a ploy to lead to his true desire, his desire to die. Because his key to eternal rule is that the multiversal war must happen again and again and again, and for that to happen, he must die and rise again. And his key to making sure this happens the same way every time is Loki. But this time around, the version of the war we as the audience are getting to see for the first time, it's going to be really different. In Endgame, Thanos learns that in the future he beats the Avengers, gathers all the stones, and fulfills his self-given destiny.
Congratulations, you're a prophet.
I think the same will be true for Kang. His prior self will have left detailed instructions on how to win the war and ascend to Emperor of the Multiverse, aka He Who Remains. I think that his plan is hidden within the files that He Who Remains gave to Miss Minutes to give to Ravonna. This detailed plan is what makes Kang so powerful. He knows all.
I know it all.
But like in Endgame, we saw the Avengers get the upper hand because Doctor Strange knew something Thanos didn't. He knew the 1 in 14 million chance that the Avengers could win, the sacrifice of Tony Stark. I think the same will be true for Loki. We'll learn that Loki has come face to face with He Who Remains many times before, and Loki will have always served as a key piece to Kang's plan of repeated destruction and his rise to power. Again, just like in Norse mythology, Loki is destined to lose so that others can flourish. I think we'll see Kang reveal to Loki that their destinies are intertwined and have been for an eternity, similar to that of Tony and Thanos.
My only curse is you.
Together, Loki and Kang are trapped in a never-ending loop, a loop that results in multiversal war, destruction, and Kang ascending to the throne of all existence. Kang has always counted on Loki being unwilling to make the necessary sacrifice of himself to stop Kang's rise to power. That unwillingness always leads to Kang winning, but this time around, it will be different. Loki is no longer the selfish character he once was, and he will finally find the glorious purpose he's been searching for, essentially for an eternity. It's now his turn to follow in Tony's steps and make the ultimate sacrifice. In order to remove all Kangs from existence, prevent future multiversal wars, and do away with the tyranny and genocide of the sacred timeline and Kang, Loki will have to remove himself from the story, meaning that in order to destroy Kang, he'll have to destroy himself. Without Loki, Kang's tyrannical loop cannot continue. With Loki's self-removal, Kang's eternal loop will stop and a new multiverse will be born.
So what, Loki dies again?
Well, it seems that way at first, but as Loki fans, we should know this man can't die. Loki's ultimate sacrifice and discovery of his glorious purpose will lead him to the throne he always desired. Loki, with Sylvie by his side, will become the new overseer of the multiverse, but they'll do things differently. They'll allow time and universes to flow as they please into a vast, never-ending multiverse, the way it always did before Kangs tried to conquer it. The entire Loki series heavily implied that the mysterious man behind the curtain would be a Loki, but it wasn't. Perhaps that was a tease for what's to come. Perhaps we'll learn that Loki was supposed to be there all along. And like Tony, Loki needed to face off against himself and his own inner demons in order to accomplish his true glorious purpose. After all, Odin did say that Loki and Thor were both born to be kings.
Only one of you can ascend to the throne, but both of you were born to be kings.
All right, man, I'm convinced, but what about you guys? Let me know. Do you think that Loki will be the Tony Stark of the Multiverse Saga? Is he the main character of this story? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at either Colton and I on Twitter or any of the social media platforms. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.